Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Representatives from Brazil's civil police of Rio de Janeiro say that a record-breaking concert thankfully did not end in disaster this week after they thwarted a bombing attack that was allegedly planned by an online hate group who were attempting to turn the celebration into a mass casualty incident. The event in question was a Lady Gaga concert, which happened in Rio de Janeiro on May 3rd. The free-to-attend concert was held on Rio's Copacabana beach, drawing a crowd of well over 2 million people and making it the most highly attended performance by a female artist in history. While the event itself ended up going off without a hitch, behind the scenes, police were reportedly dealing with a number of potential security threats. However, none of these was as disturbing or as credible as the one that led to the police operation dubbed Operation Fake Monster. The operation was named after Little Monsters, a term used to describe Lady Gaga fans. And there's a good reason for this. You see, according to police, an online group posing as fans of the singer were recruiting people to carry out coordinated attacks at the event. Those attacks were said to involve improvised explosive devices, Molotov cocktails, and other weapons, and were intended to cause as much chaos and death as possible. Police now allege that the group in question, which has not been publicly identified, was engaged in trying to radicalize young people. In addition to promoting violent content and self-harm online, authorities say that the goal of the suspects was to target members of the LGBTQ community and to gain notoriety on social media. Just hours before the concert, though, a series of raids at 9 different locations across the country were carried out. This resulted in the arrests of 3 people that we know about. The accused mastermind of the bomb attack was taken into custody on an illegal firearms possession charge, while a teenager was detained for storing child sexual abuse material. A third suspect was detained after it was learned that he had allegedly planned to sacrifice a child as part of a satanic ritual during the concert. The man apparently told police his motive was that he believed Lady Gaga was a Satanist, so he was trying to make a statement by, quote, responding in the same way. While it appears none of the names of these suspects has been released at this time, and authorities have not commented further on what additional charges they could be facing, it seems the security operation was a success. Police reportedly had a massive presence at the concert, and Lady Gaga's own team apparently didn't even know about what had happened until the following day. In terms of why police didn't let the singer's team know what was going on, they later told media outlets that it was out of concern for general safety and security at the event. Given the massive crowd sizes that were expected, they stated that they wanted to avoid panic and confusion at all costs. At the time of this recording, the situation is still under investigation. Authorities in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh say that a woman has been left permanently disfigured this week after she was the victim of a horrifying attack at the alleged hands of her former lover, a man who is already married and was apparently cheating on his wife. According to police, the suspect, Ramjanam Singh Patel, had been in a 5-year-long secret relationship with the victim, identified only as a 25-year-old woman. Despite already having a wife and 4 children, he apparently planned to continue this arrangement indefinitely. However, when Patel recently found out that the 25-year-old woman was getting married, he allegedly flew into a jealous rage. And even though this was an arranged marriage, he still blamed his former lover for the fact that she was calling things off between them. On May 3rd, as the woman was returning from running errands at a local bank, Patel and 2 male accomplices drove up to her on a motorcycle. While they were wearing masks, Patel gave away his identity when he yelled at the woman, quote, "If you don't become mine, I will not let you become anyone else's." He then doused her in a strong acid before fleeing the scene. After being rushed to a local hospital, doctors did all they could for the 25-year-old victim. However, from the sounds of it, her injuries were horrifying. In a statement, a police spokesperson said in part, quote, "The substance severely burned the girl's face, neck, and shoulder, leaving her in critical condition. She was rushed to a hospital in Azamgarh, where doctors assessed her burns at around 60%. Patel and his 2 alleged accomplices were all arrested after the victim was able to give an account of what had happened. During questioning, he claimed that he did what he did because he wanted to marry the victim. According to reports, the victim's wedding was set to take place later this month, though it seems unlikely that will still be happening. At the time of this recording, she remains in critical condition, while police are preparing to file charges against all 3 of the suspects responsible for the crime. Authorities in Japan's Kanagawa Prefecture say they made an arrest in a chilling case this week after a man allegedly stalked and killed his former girlfriend before hiding her remains in his home for months. The case began back in late December of 2024 when worried family members of 20-year-old Asahi Okazaki reported her missing. Loved ones told police that they hadn't heard from her in several days and that they were concerned for her safety. They were especially alarmed because prior to her disappearance, Asahi had been dealing with a very unsettling situation with her ex-boyfriend, 27-year-old Hideyuki Shirai. Shirai had allegedly been stalking her both at her workplace and at her home. And right before Asahi was reported missing, a window had been smashed at her grandmother's place where she had been staying. Despite the fact that Asahi had called police about what was going on 9 times in the 2 weeks before her disappearance, her family says that authorities were slow to act. And even after she went missing, they claim they were told by officers that there was nothing to indicate a crime had been committed. While police have disputed this characterization of the case, saying that they interviewed Shirai multiple times over the last few months, we know that it wasn't until last week, on April 30th, that they finally went into his house in the city of Kawasaki. During a search of the property, they made an awful discovery. Underneath the floorboards in a room there, they found a bag containing skeletal human remains. An autopsy has since confirmed that these remains belonged to Asahi, and that she was dead for at least a month before the bones were found. There were also reportedly signs of burning found during the examination. Shirai was arrested on May 1st at Tokyo's Haneda Airport after returning from a trip to the United States. So far, it appears he has denied any wrongdoing, and police are still investigating how Asahi was actually killed. Asahi's family members blasted police following the revelation, particularly her father, who said that he would never forgive investigators for their lack of action. He is now demanding that authorities hold an open session with him and other family members to explain how the investigation was conducted and why it took so long for progress to be made. At the time of this recording, Shirai remains in custody on suspicion of abandoning a corpse. Further charges are expected to follow. Authorities in the Argentine city of Rosario say that they are investigating the aftermath of a disturbing situation this week after a police officer who was on a leave of absence allegedly attempted to violently kidnap his ex-partner, leading to a fatal shootout. The whole thing began shortly before 7 a.m. on May 4th, when the man in question, 46-year-old Cristian Ariel Oficialdegui, showed up unannounced at the female victim's home in Rosario's Casiano Casas neighborhood. He was armed with 2 different handguns and proceeded to force her from the residence and into his waiting car. Thankfully, the woman's son was home, and he began following behind and contacting police. The commotion also caught the attention of a number of the victim's neighbors, who also reached out to police and began gathering outside. A few blocks away, the unidentified female victim managed to escape from Oficialdegui's vehicle while he was distracted. She then ran back to her house. However, her 46-year-old attacker refused to give up and chased her. He then attempted to perform the same kidnapping again, all the while threatening bystanders and Good Samaritans who attempted to intervene. Though several people tried to calm him down, this was unsuccessful, and instead, the man began firing shots into the air. When authorities got there minutes later, the situation had turned into a crowded and dangerous standoff, one that boiled over when Oficialdegui allegedly began shooting at officers. When one of them was hit in the foot, police returned fire, striking Oficialdegui in the head. He was killed almost instantly. While it's easy to see how things could have turned out much worse, the fact that anyone had to die was obviously a tragedy, and authorities now say they are looking into the situation to try and figure out what happened in the lead up to the violent incident. Though this investigation is still in the preliminary stages, it seems that Oficialdegui, who was an officer with the state police, had been off on a medical leave since 2 years prior to this week's incident. The specifics of that medical leave have not been reported, though it said it was related to psychological issues. What's also been reported is that Oficial de Guy had a prior history of aggression. In 2018, he was arrested after slapping a traffic inspector when he refused a vehicle inspection, and in 2022, he was detained for brandishing a firearm at a motorist during the middle of a traffic dispute. At the time of this recording, the situation is still under investigation. Police in St. Andrew Parish, Jamaica, say that they were investigating a disturbing execution-style killing after a popular singer and TikTok star was brutally gunned down during the middle of a live stream last week. The whole thing unfolded on the evening of April 28th outside of a local snack shop on Red Hills Road. That's where 25-year-old Jabari Johnson, better known to his followers by the name Baba Skang, was streaming to online fans. He and his friend were connected over TikTok and were playing a game together when the situation took a horrifying turn. In harrowing video footage recorded by Jabari's own phone camera, you can see him laughing and talking with his friend, completely unaware of what's about to happen. He takes a couple of steps back, and as he does, a man dressed in a dark outfit wearing a black mask can be seen entering the edge of the frame. Moments later, gunshots begin to ring out. Jabari was hit multiple times in the head and upper body at close range, and never had a chance to defend himself. According to local media sources who were able to view the disturbing uncut footage, screams could be heard immediately after the shooting, while the gunman fled on foot. Jabari was pronounced dead at the scene. At the time of this recording, police say that they are conducting a full investigation. However, essentially no other information has been released about the crime so far. Based on the way it was carried out, it's safe to assume the killing was targeted, but we really don't know much more than that. Adding to the tragedy, Jabari is apparently the fourth social media star to be killed in Jamaica in just the past few months. His murder has gained extra attention, though, because his father, Ja Mason, is a well-known reggae musician. Currently, the investigation continues. Authorities in the Thai province of Chiang Rai say that a man was detained, mostly for his own safety, last week after he caused concern among the residents of a local village by walking around with weapons and claiming to be a mythical creature. The whole thing unfolded sometime on April 26th when police in Mae Chan district received calls from several worried people. They said that there was a man exhibiting signs of mental illness who was going around carrying knives and saying that he was some kind of serpent deity. When police arrived at the scene, they found the man in question, identified only as a 43-year-old from a completely different province, hiding out in a hut on the outskirts of the area. It didn't take long for officers to see what the villagers had been talking about. Not only was the man in possession of a bag full of knives, he was bought all the way in on this mythical serpent delusion. As they tried to talk to him, he repeatedly stuck his tongue in and out of his mouth and began chanting in what he claimed was a snake language. Due to the man's erratic behavior, officers weren't able to approach him right away, but eventually they came up with a clever solution. After pretending to create some holy water, they gave it to the 43-year-old to drink. This apparently worked and caused him to calm down enough that he could be taken for a medical evaluation. In the end, no charges were filed, and police were able to make contact with some of the man's relatives so that he could receive further treatment. The residents of a tiny Australian town are struggling to come to grips with the reality of a horrifying tragedy this week, after two young boys were found dead in their home and their own grandmother was arrested for the crime. The situation began on the afternoon of May 5th when New South Wales police were notified about concerns for the safety of the two brothers, identified only as Sam and Max. The boys, who were 6 and 7 years old, had failed to show up for school that day, and a government caseworker who had been assigned to them stated that they'd received an alarming message from the boys' 66-year-old maternal grandmother, Kathleen, who was also their primary caregiver. When police arrived at the property where the three of them were living in the town of Coonabarabran, they made an absolutely crushing discovery. After forcing their way inside, officers found Max and Sam lying unresponsive in their respective bedrooms. Kathleen was also at the scene and was reportedly in the middle of harming herself. She was taken into custody and later transported to a mental health facility, but sadly, there was nothing that could be done for the boys. They were pronounced dead at the scene. Right now, no information is available about the causes of death or what happened in the lead up to the alleged killings. However, some local reports have stated that there were no signs of weapon-related injuries to the boys' bodies. The little we do know about the situation, though, is pretty grim. According to reports, Sam and Max were living with their grandmother in the first place to get them out of a bad situation. According to multiple media sources, the boys had been placed in Kathleen's care after their parents had faced undisclosed struggles, and they were taken from their custody out of concern for their welfare. No details have been revealed about what these struggles were, though from the sounds of it, the boys had tough lives, especially the younger brother, who was born with additional special needs and had battled cancer. One news outlet additionally stated that at the time the boys were removed from their parents' custody, quote, "The grandmother witnessed an incident involving her family too graphic to publish the details of, and became known to police as a victim of crime." It said that Kathleen herself had no prior criminal record or history of mental health issues before this week's tragedy. She had moved Sam and Max to Coonabarabran in early 2024, evidently with the goal of giving them a fresh start. By all accounts, that was exactly what had happened in the past few months. The boys were enrolled in school, were making friends, and were taking part in a number of local activities, including karate. In fact, they were due to receive their yellow belts the day after they were found dead. A police source told reporters there were, quote, "no warning signs" ahead of the killings. Of course, that leaves a lot of unanswered questions about what exactly happened, though authorities say they are now looking into whether Kathleen was receiving adequate support ahead of the tragedy. Even so, they say she is expected to face serious charges once she is released from psychiatric supervision. The situation is still developing. Authorities in southwestern France say that they are investigating the murder of a British South African expat after she was found dead under disturbing and mysterious circumstances outside of her home last week. The whole thing began late on the night of April 29th, when a 74-year-old man named Jean-François Guerrier contacted police in the municipality of Trémolat. Guerrier said that he had gone to check in on one of his friends, 65-year-old Karen Carter, only to stumble across a horrifying scene. Karen was lying unresponsive and covered in blood on the driveway of her home. When emergency responders arrived, they attempted to do what they could for Karen. However, it was already too late. She was pronounced dead a short time later, the result of 8 stab wounds to her chest, groin, arms, and legs. The injuries made it clear that she had fought for her life. As police began looking further into Karen's background, they learned that she was a married mother of 4 who was originally from the UK and South Africa. She was living alone in France at the time of her death, while her husband of 30 years, Alan Carter, was back at their main residence in East London, South Africa. For some reason, police apparently did not reach out to Alan immediately. Instead, he had the gut-wrenching experience of learning about his wife's murder from a relative in Trémolat who had seen the news reported in a local Facebook post. This wasn't the end of Alan's heartbreak, though. As it turned out, he was about to get some more shocking news. You see, at the time of Karen's death, she had been having a months-long affair. The other man, so to speak, was none other than the friend who had found Karen, Jean-François Guerrier. Alan has since told the media that he had suspicions that something was going on between his wife and Guerrier, and that he had previously confronted her about this. Over the last little while, she had been spending increasing amounts apart from him in France, where they owned a couple of holiday rental properties. But whenever Alan asked about this, Karen reportedly insisted that she and Guerrier were just friends, and that she was busy running their rental business. Naturally, Guerrier was the first person questioned by police, especially since he had also been the one that had found Karen. He reportedly came clean about the affair, though, and provided a timeline of events for that night. He said that he, Karen, and several other friends had been at his place enjoying a wine tasting. When she left around 10 p.m., she agreed to call him to say she'd made it home safely, but she never did. He stated that this is why he went to check on her. Suspicion next turned to a 69-year-old woman named Marie Hautefort, who police say was infatuated with Guerrier. Hautefort was actually arrested and briefly held in connection with the killing, though according to the most recent available reports, she was later released after she was able to provide an alibi. At the time of this recording, unfortunately, this is where the case currently stands. It appears that the primary theory is still that a love triangle or some kind of grudge was the motive behind Karen's killing. However, that has yet to be substantiated. The investigation into the mysterious and tragic case continues. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.